We're going to be discussing a few things and looking at a few things that I have saved over at my Twitter. So it's being revealed at this time that a Chinese billionaire is the second largest foreign U.S. landowner. Okay, we're talking about over 200,000 acres in Central Oregon. I've been discussing China buying land in the U.S. for years. This is strategic. And what is the U.S. going to do if it defaults on the debt that it owes? So I'm going to be discussing in brief some of the things that I've been concerned about, because some things are manifesting now in the news that I've been warning about for years, right? So this is significant, and they did not tell the American people about this land purchase that was made in the year 2015 for $85 million, okay? And he paid only $430 per acre, okay? So that is taking place. I've been warning you for years about solar flares, and people have ignored the content for years, and as I said to you, but when it's people on the right wing, in many cases, people listen to it. So Tucker Carlson has a show out about the solar flares and how many people in the U.S. may die and on the planet in the event of a massive solar flare. So you need to understand that a lot of my work that I've talked about for years has been truthful and has been suppressed. I want to make this point now. We are seeing these attacks on Yemen, on the Houthis, exactly 3 months after the October eclipse. I told you there would be wars with the eclipse. Murders and possessions. This is what we're seeing in the news. Local news, national news, and international news. So we see the events of October 7th being used to justify the deaths of tens of thousands of innocent Palestinians. We're seeing a rise in racism towards Palestinians and other Islamic groups, also in a rise in racism towards Jews as well. And a lot of propaganda out there saying anyone criticizing Zionism is against Jews, is an anti-Semite. So, while I've stood against anti-Semitism, we're also seeing a sharp increase in racism from some Jews and some Israelis and some sympathizers of Israel. And so both Hamas / the Palestinians and Israel / the Jews at this time are being called Nazis, with a lot of this propaganda manifesting on Twitter. And it's on Twitter where we can see that there are people out there that are saying that they are seeing snuff videos. That is to say, they're seeing videos of people being killed. This is not something that surprises me. This is not an accident. So I have a warning for Muslims around the world, as well as Christians, Jews, white people, black people. But it's really important for people to understand that the events that are manufactured right now are there to destroy us. People need to understand that they are manufactured. It's unfortunate that this white woman was abused by this black caretaker of sorts at an elderly care facility. But there's a reason why they're showing you these types of videos. And there's a reason why they're showing you other videos as well of other groups being attacked. Okay. And it's to cause a reaction. Let's go back to the Islamic world. We see this video of the dead baby. We see other videos of other dead babies. People are traumatized by this. We see the statements from some of these accounts on Twitter. This one saying, "Let her die and suffer. Feel free to die along with her." Some people are converting to Islam as a result of this. While I'm not a member of any religion, I am more curious, by the way, about the spiritual side of Islam, knowing that Islam has been so heavily demonized in this country, in the West. And I think it's for a reason. And I think it's for a reason why they also have brutal rulership over the people in many Islamic countries, some of which have close ties to the West. So we're talking about countries like Saudi Arabia, other corrupt Islamic, so-called Islamic governments. So I'm going to talk more about that in the future. Just want to make a number of points here in this video. Here's a politician by the name of Avi Lipkiv, who says that Israel's borders will expand to Mecca, Medina, and Mount Sinai. So as they show the Muslim world their mosques being destroyed, all their mosques being destroyed in Gaza, And as they show them their Qurans being burned, and as they starve them in countries like Afghanistan, and drone strike them in countries like Yemen, as the US has been arming the Saudis for years, they're trying to cause aspects of the Islamic world to react. And if they don't react, they will likely cause an event themselves, right? So if you're watching this in the future, in 2026, 2027, 2028, look at the events that took place in this year of 2024 and 2025. And also how many events occur around the period of geomagnetic storms. So again, we're seeing the suffering happening on a massive scale. And it seems to be, this is the level that most people don't understand, that aren't spiritual. And it's sad that people that are Muslims and Christians don't understand this. When their own religions talk about Shaitan and Satan. This is clearly a sacrifice of human beings. And we see even the White House talk about the 100 days, but they don't talk about the 100 days of genocide in Gaza. They're talking about the 100 days, the official story of the captives in Gaza, the alleged kidnappings of these IDF soldiers, which are being made out to be the ultimate victims. But again, how is Hamas even able to be so effective at what they did? Now there's information coming out saying that Israel has shot their own hostages. They have something called the Hannibal Directive. So we're seeing a psychotic, demon-possessed consciousness coming out of Israel right now. And this is also going to manifest in people responding in violent ways in response. John Cusack, the actor, is pointing out that white phosphorus is being used. So here we have Joe Biden, basically, in a number of ways, doing his part for the Donald Trump campaign. Okay, there are people that voted for Biden that are now going to vote for Donald Trump because they don't understand that both candidates are under control of the same forces of evil. China is positioning itself to look like the good guys as it calls for a ceasefire and an independent state of Palestine. And so the ships that are marked Chinese allegedly are not being attacked by the Houthis in Yemen at this time, but US ships at this time and UK ships are being targeted. So keep in mind, the sun will be its most active in 2 decades. Okay. Note that 22 years ago in 2002, they began to bomb Afghanistan and later Iraq in March of 2023. Now that it's 22 years later, new countries are being attacked. Okay, so again, we saw this kick off around the 7th of October, which is where we saw the eclipse. We're right now in the middle between the October eclipse and the April 2024 eclipse. Okay, and so we're likely to see an event around April of 2024. So I just want to echo some of the predictions that I've made over the years. I said in 2006, it seems like the powers that be are sacrificing the US and Israel, that they don't even care about us nor white people or any of that. This is what a lot of white people and Americans don't understand, that they as Americans and Israelis and Europeans are also being sacrificed. See? And the algorithms and the manipulation online is there to convince them at all times that it's just simply foreigners and migrants, which is why they are suffering and facing these wars and facing these economic collapses. People purport to know that there's an elite, but in the end, they still come down to blaming people that don't look like them. And it's unfortunate they don't realize that the so-called weaponized immigration is being done to make life a living hell for various people of color and ethnic minorities in these countries. I mean, think and think with compassion, think with your heart, feel with your heart, go beyond thinking with your head. These things that are being done, this weaponized immigration, this problem that people are having with some of these attacks being carried out in Europe by certain radical groups and others. It makes life a living hell for innocent ethnic minorities living in those countries. And history has shown us that oftentimes we do see a series of events or false flags that end up being blamed on ethnic groups, in which tyrannical governments later put them away. And, we see now in China in 2009, to go back to that example, how after the so-called terror attacks by the Uyghurs, how they began to crack down and use the war on terror um, propaganda against their own people in China. And so in many ways, governments around the world have benefited from the 9/11 event by controlling their people even more and marginalizing them as terrorists, even if they have nothing to do with terrorists themselves, these innocent people that live in their countries. Meanwhile, China will actually have something to do with radical extremists. They're called the Taliban. That's right. China will sit down and do business with the Taliban. But meanwhile, while it's doing that, it will torture Uyghurs and will force them to confess that they are terrorists, that they did something wrong, when in fact they are innocent. So you need to understand that this pattern is taking place. You need to be aware that for years, people have been concerned that the U.S. is controlling ISIS. And so keep that in mind as we see these attacks in Iran. And look at how Iran is now striking targets in Iraq, including ISIS targets. This is not the first time that Iran has struck ISIS targets. And it's been pointed out in the past that in some cases, other governments have done more to fight ISIS than the U.S. There's been videos released in the past of British troops being caught in Iraq dressing up like Iraqis. And so this came out in the news in 2006, but society never really woke up to the fact that there were agent provocateurs at work. According to the Ministry of Defense in Afghanistan, 47,000 is a number given for the amount of people dying there. And the figure is definitely a million more. And I see that other people also agree with me and see that. Many people do, that have the compassion and empathy to see those people as humans. I still continue to see people labeling the Afghan refugees that have suffered so greatly from the Russians, the U.S. occupation, and the Taliban. They are being discussed quite often in conspiracy circles as the most subhuman group as well. I saw another video recently in which a lot of really intelligent things were said about this spiritual warfare taking place on the planet. Things that I discuss, right? And then it gets into discussing the refugees and discusses the fact that because some of them are from Afghanistan, they are the worst of the worst. And yet this person thinks that he is above the dark side. He thinks that he is in a position to talk about the alien agenda over humanity, when in fact he seems to be infected by it. There's a lot of people discussing this stuff that seem to be infected by the archonic realms themselves. So I've been concerned about a roundup of ethnic minorities in this country for a number of years. I'm not the only one. And if they were to have a series of false flag events, there would be people on the left and the right engaging in greater discrimination, depending on the severity of the attack. Obviously, a dirty bomb attack in a U.S. city or multiple attacks would be much more devastating than 9/11. And so I'm concerned about this. And, I see a pattern here between China and the U.S. As things got worse for Muslims around the world after 2014, when there was an expansion fake news targeting refugees and ethnic minorities here, we saw the clampdown on the Uyghurs in China. Okay, all of a sudden they had to, have passports to travel. And so we saw a pattern here between the West and China and India and Europe, a rise in the far right in Europe. And so we're constantly seeing a rise in people tweeting, right? Angry that the elite, the establishment, has been waging war in certain countries for years and then has been importing them in mass. Instead of people having compassion for these people that have had their countries destroyed, their lives destroyed, their family members killed in some cases before their very eyes, instead of having compassion for them, they are being seen as a threat. And as more countries are destroyed and attacked, the sense of danger Americans feel with regards to immigrants is only going to increase from here on out. As I've seen an increase in people calling for the Palestinians or the Palestinian women to be raped, for there to be a genocide, for there to be an extermination. This is some of the conversation that's being had at the UN with regards to South Africa and the lawsuit that is taking place, which of course Germany blocked. Germany of all countries, right? What a surprise. Not a surprise. Germany blocks the South Africa lawsuit. So I predicted for years that we could see events take place in which a world court charges the US with genocide. And if it was to round up ethnic minorities or Muslims in this country, or to engage in a genocide somewhere else, right? That can come back and haunt the US. And right now they're talking about millions, over 2 million, I believe, displaced in Gaza. And here we have this Hindu extremist, possibly, suspect, Sunak of the UK. And so I've talked to you already about this rise in Hindus and Indians that are being used as tools by the far right. And that includes the individual that appears to be running. And I think that when it comes to a lot of these people that are running right now, a lot of them are what I would call dead horses, like Nikki Haley and others. They're not really running to win. They're not going to win. They're taking up space. They already have it predetermined who's going to win. Okay. So I've long predicted of a day in which the international community brings up the crimes of the US on screen, including that of white supremacists in their march up to war against the US, which could lead up into an invasion, of which yours truly has warned you about for years. Even though I don't like what the US has done, white supremacy or racism, I can see how it could be used against the US and innocent Americans down the line. That's what I see coming. That's what's scary. About 1 in 100 people in Gaza have been killed since October 7th. And I've watched some of the footage recently. I've even seen footage of Chinese police beating up somebody, a Uyghur, who had his hands tied behind his back, or he was handcuffed. It's also a little strange that people on the left are in denial about the Uyghur situation, and many of them are being conditioned to be pro-China because, they're being entertained by TikTok, because they think that it's great that TikTok provides a sense of free speech that YouTube does not. A lot of it's unfortunately narcissism with people on social media. They have a greater reach on TikTok than they do on these other platforms. So they like TikTok, regardless of TikTok being owned by ByteDance. And what does ByteDance do? It tracks the family members of the dissidents of the Uyghurs in this section of China, Xinjiang, Xingianj. It's this large section of China. It's twice the size of Texas. It includes beautiful areas, but also a large desert area in which they also do weapons testing, another place in which they have their camps. And I've said to you many times, China has shown you in suggestive videos regarding the Uyghurs living in paradise made by Chinese influencers working for the CCP. So what is YouTube doing? Promoting videos by Chinese influencers downplaying the Uyghur genocide. So it is unfortunate that the right wing will capitalize on this because of this emerging war with China, or as one documentary put it, the coming war on China. But I would not say that China is innocent. That's not my position. China's not innocent with what we've seen it do to Buddhists, the Tibetans, um, the Uyghurs, and its own population. Okay. So China is providing reconstruction around the world, but it's also, right, coddling and developing dictatorships around the world. And in surveillance state, there are some examples of that that are provided. Situations in which the Chinese government, via Huawei, provided surveillance of political opponents, of the actual candidates that China was backing. Okay. And so we are living now in a dangerous time in which China is holding so much data of the American people, the Russians as well. And we've seen an escalation in cyber attacks against the U.S. For a number of years. We saw the FAA hit with something in the last few years. In the event of communications going out, we will meet at our local libraries every Saturday at 9 a.m. in every town, city, and every state. Pass it on. See, it's like people should be communicating, but this is a very difficult time for people to be communicating because we've been so divided. So I want to have a meetup group. I want to work with locals. But because consciousness is in the toilet, unfortunately, I don't think that that is a good idea. If I were Iran and wanted to inflict a brutal cyber attack on North America, I knock down the power grid right now, everyone would freeze to death. So replying to Tucker Carlson, some people are saying, yeah, they'll blame it on the sun, but it'll really be a cyber attack. Of course, that's possible. And then, of course, they are warning about Disease X. Here's Disclose.tv, which deleted my warning of 2025, Wars by 2025 video with Joel Skousen. So I'm going to wrap things up. We're close. We're close to major world events. Get prepared if you can. But most of all, get prepared spiritually. There's going to be a lot of propaganda. We're likely to see a number of false flag events as Trump comes back into power. And we're likely to see him receive a war that Biden starts. We're likely to see events around April of 2024. And we're likely to see more statements from Biden by design that make Trump look good. And I'm not for either. I see it all part of the master plan. And it's unfortunate that there aren't more people on the left or on the right that actually understand this, that want to deprogram, maybe understand why they were born into this, shithole of a world. And instead of just sitting there being affected by the evil of this world. Here we're seeing more videos of people being strip searched or stripped naked by soldiers. And see, as the U.S. allows this to take place, mark my words, they are fomenting anger against the U.S. and the American people in the future. And so if some of the things that I've predicted do come to fruition regarding human trafficking and horrible things happening to Americans or the West, it would be the result of what the elites have done and manufactured and set up around the world, which includes hate of the American people and hate of a variety of ethnicities. And it's they that have been developing and perfecting this algorithmic nightmare. This is a post about dragons being associated with the U.S. military, SpaceX, and NASA. And I would say that what we're definitely seeing right now is the invasion of human consciousness. A lot of people think that they're finding it at the Miami Mall or in somebody's backyard in Las Vegas, or somebody's backyard in New York, or some pictures of UFOs or videos of UFOs that are on YouTube. But I think that what we're really dealing with is a malevolent consciousness that controls our government, that has been behind the agenda to kill millions of people in Iraq and Afghanistan, has been behind the agenda to demonize these Muslim groups and various bloodlines, even if they're not Muslim. There's a reason why groups like ISIS have been created as well, I believe, and that they have been going on various killing sprees of the Kurds and other groups in the Middle East, even other Muslims. There's a reason why Muslim countries have been propped up around the planet that seem to take pride in their persecution of their own populations. So this is an evil agenda. The dark ETs, as they have been referred to, have not been moved off planet. They are very much alive and well. And as far as I'm concerned, they are very much behind the mass killings taking place since this October 7th eclipse. And this alien agenda will continue while people continue to be distracted by Disclosure Project videos and QAnon disinformation and racial supremacy ideology and anti-themism psychosis and on and on. So folks, strap yourself in. Things will get crazy.